Get ready for Hosts at Home. On today's show, one of the biggest faces of Nickelodeon in the 90s. He took contestants inside of a video game on Nick Arcade. Made parents shave their heads on You're On. We're talking, of course, about Phil Moore. And today, he's on Hosts at Home, that is. And now, here's your host, who interviews the host, Adam Wurtzel.
Thanks, Richard Melness. Hey, everybody. I'm Adam Wurtzel. Welcome to Hosts at Home. Yes, still the show where we chat with some of your favorite hosts, past and present. This man was a huge part of my childhood, from shows like You're On, Slime Time, and of course, the most famous of them all, Nick Arcade. This face hasn't changed, I swear to you, since Nick Arcade was on the air. Phil Moore, you look fantastic. Welcome to Hosts at Home.
Hey, Adam, thanks a lot, man. It's great to be here. And does it count if I'm not at my own home? I'm at somebody. No, I'm actually at my own place. Hey, man, it's so good to be here. We've known each other for a long time. People may not know. And it's been, I got to give you props, man. I've watched you and things you've been doing in your career. And, big kudos, man. I couldn't be more proud of what you've been doing. Congratulations on all your success and everything. And Host at Home, what a brilliant idea, because doggone it, that's what I am right now.
That's what a lot of people are. And thank you for saying that. And yes, I will send you that Venmo payment for saying that on this.
wait, just like in those spy movies. I haven't gotten it yet. On with the interview.
Yeah.
Okay, on with the interview.
Our first question is always this, Phil. Tell everybody where home is for you.
Home for me is living, and I'm in LA right now. Actually, I'm in Burbank. I was living in Hollywood for a while, for a very long time, working as a producer on a lot of different shows. And now I'm in Burbank, where I now reside. I actually just moved here about a year ago. Moved to LA, though, from Florida, 2003. Been here for a while. Went through the gamut of things, but back producing game shows, went back to my first love, man. So it's kind of good to be the circle of life, Simba. It's come around. You play the game.
And we're going to talk about all the great shows that you're producing and everything. You're still involved with Nickelodeon, which is so cool. We're going to talk about that.
Yeah.
But first, you moved to Los Angeles from the mecca of theme parks, Orlando, Florida, but you're from Baltimore. Tell everybody your story about how you got to Orlando.
I did the regular thing, I grew up in Baltimore, went to high school, graduated high school, applied to attend a college down in Florida, Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University in Daytona Beach. And that's what got me down to Florida. But I started, somebody said, hey, look, there's a comedy club doing open mic night. We're all unemployed, but they whoever wins open mic night, they give them like $100. And so they all kind of egged me on. And so I had to kind of put together material. So I started doing stand-up. And my personality has been like this all along. I mean, my mom actually said she was really happy when I made the career change. She goes, great, now you get paid for what I used to have to come to school and get you out of the principal's office for. And that eventually led to audience warm-ups for TV shows, which you're very familiar with. For people who don't know, when you see the audience up and pumped and having a good time, there's a hype man that you don't see that gets them all revved up ahead of time. And as fate would have it, even though I was temporarily residing in New York doing all of these stand-up comedy things, I got hooked up with MTV and a show called Remote Control.
That is so cool. How did the experience on set at Remote Control prepare you, and watching Ken prepare you for the world of hosting?
Dude, I gotta tell you, I to this day I give big props to the late great Ken Ober and everybody there. Steve Trekus, who was on keyboards, and Kari Warher and everybody, because it was my introduction into television. I mean, I was doing just stand up, and I thought that's all I wanted to do. I was happy doing it. I'd done a couple of specials. I was happy doing that. But then at the time, what was happening is I was about to become a dad. My wife at the time was expecting our first child. I didn't want to be on the road, so I took the gig that was back in my own backyard. But this is when I got my introduction into TV.
Oh, that's so cool. Before I want to talk about, of course, all the hosting stuff that you've done, but I think the most important question I have about Remote Control, did you ever try the chair that went back into the wall?
What you got? Andrea, you.
I heck yeah, man. I did the chair. I used to love just sitting in the chair and grabbing in the remote and clicking. And nothing would happen. They would never change anything for me. That was always fun. I never appeared on camera except for one time. And they asked me on the very last episode, you've never appeared on camera. Would you like to appear on camera? And I said, yeah. So there's a picture of me when the camera's panning the audience and everybody's screaming, trying to be seen on camera. And I'm just standing there with a sign that says, hey, I work here. And so it pans the audience, everybody's yelling and screaming, and then there's me, hey, I work here.
And that puts it into perspective right there. In 1991, you land this dream job on Nick Arcade, a cult classic show. Tell everybody how you got this gig.
Well, again, that part is like kind of boring. It's just an audition. For those of you who don't know, your agent calls and goes, listen, we got a call. They want a guy between the ages of this and that. They want him about this tall. You fit the bill. Here's your sides, which is TV word for a piece of the script. Here's your sides and show up at 3. That's it. It's just boring. But the road to there is actually pretty interesting because I was still doing audience warm-up. My son was born. I wanted to stay home now. So it was great that I could go out, do stand-up comedy, work in the television field in my own backyard, And I was doing the audience warm-up for Let's Make a Deal. But the thing that turned things around for me was Dick Clark. It was a Dick Clark production, and he would be there every now and then, but I never saw him. I mean, he was above my pay grade to be rubbing elbows with. So I never saw the man, but we had an incident where we had a Zonk prize, and it was a big giant elephant, and the elephant took a crap on the soundstage floor. And so it was at the end of the show. It was like I'd already done my best bits. I'd done my best ad-lib stuff because by now I'd learned how to ad-lib really well. And all of a sudden this guy goes and says, the stage manager says, so we need you to stretch. And I was like, so I've already done my material. I've already done my ad-libs, and now I've got to fill like 20 minutes. And I did. And we had the audience and I, this is like 900 people full of everybody from 15-year-olds to 80-year-old grandmas all in this audience. And then all of a sudden I see somebody waving me, telling me to introduce, and I see him in the wing. So I've never met the man. I'm like, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Dick Clark. And he comes out and he shakes my hand, and I'm like trying to be cool, like, yeah, Dick and I, we're cool. And he pulls me over and says, first of all, normally folks, when something like this happens, it's like panicking up in the control room. The biggest thing we're concerned about is losing our audience. He goes, I've never had so much fun as to watching this guy entertain y'all doing this thing. And he says, how about a big hand for Phil Moore? And I was like, I almost faked it. And so literally, I'm not kidding. When the show was over with, I went to a phone, I called my agent, told her that whole story. And I said, if Dick Clark gives you the praise, I felt like then that is a sign that I'm ready. And so I said, send me out for anything. And the first thing she sent me out on was Nick Arcade.
Got the first gig that you auditioned for as a host?
The first, as a host. I got little auditions for little commercials. I did a little local commercials and stuff. But the first television show she sent me out for was Nick Arcade.
A lot of hosts came, before you was Nickelodeon, Mark Summers, of course, Wesley Yore. You had the hosts from Wild and Crazy Kids. Did you ever get any advice from some of those hosts before hosting Nick Arcade?
Only Mark Summers. At the time, like I said, when I first, started in the business, I didn't have any children, so I didn't watch Nickelodeon. I was a grown-up. It's funny. Everybody looks at me on Nick Arcade, and they think that I'm this kid. But season 1 of Nick Arcade, I'm almost 30 years old. People didn't realize it because I didn't look it. So I wasn't watching Nickelodeon, but I did know about Double Dare. It's no matter who you are, no matter where you are, everyone knows about Double Dare, So when I got there, I met Mike O'Malley first, and he was just fun. He was just fun. He was like, hey, yeah, welcome to the party, man. You're in the family. Da, da, da. But I watched Mark, and Mark Summers is a tactician, man. I watched him, and we got up to the week that we were going to do the first episode of Nick Arcade. We've been through rehearsals, and we're upstairs in the office area, and he's going to his office, and I'm coming out of mine. And I was like, "Hey, Mark, can I ask you a question?" He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "Hey, everything looks great, man. I was watching the rehearsal. Everything looks terrific, man. You're doing a great job, blah, 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 blah." I was like, "Yeah, hey, great. Can we go in your office?" And he said, "Sure." We come in, and I shut the door. I'm like, "I don't know what I'm doing, man." I'm like freaking out. I'm like, everybody's talking in my ear, and I'm just winging it, man. I don't know if I'm doing it right. I'm like, please. I literally like, "Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. You're my only hope." And he was about to have lunch, but the dude set aside his lunch, told me to sit down, and we just went back and forth about what it is that makes hosting great.
You know, there had been arcade style game shows before. There was a show called Starcade. There was a show called The Video Game. But Nick Arcade was the first of its kind. There had never been kids, you know, a door opening and kids going inside of a video game. Can you kind of walk us through the technology at the time?
It's funny. I've talked to the creators of the show, James Bethea and Karim Metef, several times because, you know, as you go out and do big helps and Nick takes over your schools and now the various gaming cons and Comic Cons, everybody wants to know about it. And, you know, it's more than just green screen. The thing that was brilliant was that James and Karim invented a technology that didn't exist up until that time in order to do the show. And that is taking the simple thing of green screen, but they wrote a program that essentially made the computer think that people were the computer mouse. So you know how like we move the mouse around, the little arrow goes around, you get on subscribe, you click it, and then something happens. So imagine if the mouse could move on its own. A human being can move on its own. And so they came up with a program that made the computer, tricked the computer into thinking that this other thing, this human being, was the mouse. And so just like you click on the button to subscribe, just how you click on the like button, just how you do all that stuff, they had positioned within the programming, you put your hand here and move, and this thing happens, you move your hand here, and this thing happens. They invented that, and that was the biggest, like, mind-blowing thing.
I want to talk about where the show taped, the iconic Nickelodeon studios. Sadly, there is no more Nickelodeon studios in Orlando.
Look how they massacred my boy.
You know, from the outside looking in and from going there as a kid, there was always something going on. You had the GAC Kitchen, you had the Game Lab, you had other shows taping at the same time.
The slime guys are going out, yeah.
You kind of talk about, paint the picture of what it was like to be in that madness.
First of all, you can't say it like you said it. If you're on camera with Nickelodeon, you have to go, Nick Arcade was filmed at Universal Studios, Orlando, Florida. You have to do it like that.
Before a live audience.
Nick Arcade was filmed from a live studio audience at Universal Studios, Orlando, Florida. It's crazy. The experience. Okay, see, I don't want to burst anybody's bubble here because, you know, fans of the show and fans of Universal have this love for it. But honestly, again, remember, I'm like almost 30 years old, hosting a TV show for the first time ever. It was just The Office, you know? Now, I think also when people talk about the golden age and what's different about it, the shows on Nickelodeon are great. Then, now, and future. But the thing that made Nickelodeon an experience was this interactive, like real tangible connection. You could go by and you could see the people sitting. You could walk by. There's Melissa Joan Hart getting her hair done. You know, there's whoever, the cast from all that, and they're trying on goofy costumes because they'd be and we would always wave to them. They couldn't hear us, but we would always like acknowledge them because we were always so appreciative of them. We are who we are because of the fans. And I always said 90s Nickelodeon fans are the greatest in the world.
But you're a rarity, Phil, because not only did you host Nickelodeon game shows in studio, you took them on the road. I was there at Nassau Coliseum in Long Island, New York for the Nickelodeon live tour. And it was so cool. Can you kind of talk about some of those memories?
Man, okay. I got to tell you, I've done a lot of terrific things. I've had a lot of terrific, career opportunities, and I've met some amazing people. But if I had to sum it all up as to what was the coolest thing that I wish I could just kind of do again, that would be run out on stage with Mike O'Malley in front of 25,000 screaming people and do that show again. It was the best. They took, for those of you who don't know what happened, they took aspects of Nick Arcade and Nickelodeon Guts and put them together in a touring show, but they filled out the middles with stuff from Wild and Crazy Kids and What Would You Do and Double Dare, you know, and they tried not to touch on the Double Dare stuff too much because Double Dare had its own tour, you know, with Mark Summers and Robin. But they took aspects from these other shows that didn't have tours, and we filled in the gaps. So we would do a funny game from Wild and Crazy Kids. We do a funny thing from What Would You Do? And then we'd like, boom, take you into the video zone live on stage. Then we do the Elastic Jungle. We do the Elastic Basketball. And then we boom, play another game. It was amazing. And we would get the audiences from down in front and way up in the rafters. If you were sitting in the nosebleed seats, we would run up and grab you. It was 2 hours of just controlled chaos. And the thing that made it for me, I still have this piece of newspaper, but we played Madison Square Garden. I was like, oh my gosh, I've played Madison Square Garden to what was a sellout audience. I mean, I think it was 27,000 people, because, you know, they don't let you behind the stage, you know, so the audience kind of goes from a point and then out and around. But we sold out Madison Square Garden. And then the front page of the entertainment section said, Fillmore and Mike O'Malley are rock and roll for kids. I was like, Mike dropped. I could die now. You know?
I will say, I honestly believe if you and Mike were to go out and do that show again today, that you would still sell out.
I wouldn't doubt it. The difference is it would be a whole bunch of grown-ups wanting to play all the games instead of the kids. Like they were, because, you know, with Nickelodeon, you know, back in the day, the slogan was Nickelodeon is kids. So even though we'd have the moms and dads and the aunts and the uncles and the cousins and the guardians and whoever were with them as the adult, we would always give like the messier or more fun aspects of the game for the kids to do, and we would always kind of have the adult be the one to kind of get the pie or the slime or whatever it is. But you know, if we did the show now, it'd be a lot of 30-somethings wanting to do the kid part, because that's what they dreamed of doing ever since they were a kid watching Nickelodeon.
You know, Nick Arcade wasn't. Oh, and by the way, for the record, you did not pick me, but that's okay. I have no hard feelings because we're really good friends.
Well, I think you were on Mike O'Malley's side. You know, it was the red side and the blue side. I think you were on Mike's side, so I think he dissed you.
Mike, I'm coming. No, I'm just.
Where's my song? Dear Mike, you diss Adam and his entire family.
I want to talk about what you're doing now. Our show is called Hosts at Home, but for the sake of it, we can also call it Awesome Producers at Home, Phil, because you're still in the business, working for Nickelodeon. Tell everybody what you're up to.
Nickelodeon came up with the show based off of the YouTube phenomenon Ryan from Ryan's Toy Review. He and his family, you know, are viral on YouTube, and this is now you're going to really dig all of these Nickelodeon connections. Okay. So there's a company called Pocket Watch, and one of the big CEOs of Pocket Watch is Albie Heck. Albie Heck is the former president of Nickelodeon, former head of Nickelodeon Films, the guy that created Guts, okay? So now he's over this show, and we're doing a TV show version of his YouTube show in the studio with Ryan and his family. I come on as a senior challenge producer. My job is to make up all of the crazy games and stunts and stuff that they do. They want them sloppy, they want them messy, they want them physical. You know, all the things I kind of used to do. You know? So we do this show. From time to time, we have celebrity guests on. I brought on Kel Mitchell. He came on and did Ed on the show. My son worked on the show also. And a couple of times, like Mike O'Malley popped out just to say hello, to see Albie and I together. It's like, I could get both of you together. You're both in the same room, you know? So it was really fun doing that. And then did that for did 3 seasons of that show, leading all the way up to pandemic time, at which point I had gotten the job as a challenge producer for a new show that was supposed to be a co-op kind of thing between Amazon Prime and Twitch. Yeah, everybody, I'm back in the video games again. And the show is called Chasing the Crown. And we did season 1. It was supposed to be an in-studio show in which we do video game competitions between people that are streamers on Twitch, but we also were going to put them through the rigors of physical challenges, IRLs, you know. And the pandemic happened. So all of a sudden, the executives and everyone involved refigured out how to do the show as a streaming show. So when the pandemic hit in March, I went from going to the office for 1 week, and then being told to go home, and then we all figured out how to do this thing as a streaming show. We did a super successful first season, and we are now in the middle of season 2. So, depending on when you're watching this, season 2 is fresh. You can watch it live on Twitch on Friday nights. And for season 1, you can now watch season 1 on Twitch, or you can watch season 1 on Amazon Prime. And so the same deal. We have 4 contestants. They're all battling out $50,000 grand prize for these streamers on Twitch, whoever walks away at the end of the season. And they're playing video games, the games Apex Legends, Battlefield, Rocket Arcade. I mean, everything that they're playing in the streaming world, we're playing on the show. And then they jump into the Fillmore part where we mix video games with physical challenges. And that's the portion of the show that I'm producing. So we're in season 2, Chasing the Crown. Check it out, everybody. It's amazing. It's a whole lot of fun. And it's done from streaming.
Phil, you've been fantastic. This has been one of the most fun interviews I've ever done. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, my pleasure, man. And by the way, you do a fantastic job. You really, really do. You've got the host thing down. It's so funny because my son, he does something different, and my girlfriend, she does something different. But because I talk about hosts so much, there are times when I'm looking at a show and I like the show and like, this show sucks, but the host is awesome. You do a phenomenal job, man. That's why you're where you are, man. And I appreciate you having me on.
Thank you. Absolutely, Phil. Thank you for the kind words, and thanks for being with us. We have another amazing host who's on our show next week. Phil, do you want to know who that is?
Yes, I do. Tell me, please.
Well, I can't tell you, but our announcer, Richard Malmus, can. Richard, who's up next?
Next time on Hosts at Home. At age 21, he became the most famous intern in the business. From The Tonight Show, Celebrity Big Brother, RuPaul's Drag Race, and countless red carpets, the host with the most, Ross Matthews, joins us. That's gonna be a good one. Back to you, Adam.
Ross Matthews is on the show next week. I'm sure he's going to have some fantastic stories. Remember, if you want to see more Hosts at Home, which, fingers crossed, I hope you do. Phil, you want to see more, right?
Always, man.
Well, you know what they have to do. This button on the bottom of your screen, hit subscribe right now. We greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, there it is. I see it.
Oh, Phil, you
right
got
there,
it?
yeah.
You got the button? Perfect.
Yeah, I got it right there. It's got it. Okay.
Phil has subscribed. We want you to do the same. My name is Adam Wurtzel. Thanks so much for joining us today on Hosts at Home. By now, you know I don't close the show. That's your job, Phil. Phil Moore, over to you.
You are watching Hosts at Home. Better watch it with a friend and don't be alone.